I have heard and read that people say this film is like John Wick in World War II. And it is not. It has nothing compared to John Wick, except that there is a dog and people die, and that's it. Like, I've seen a lot of bad movies in my sneak days, but in this movie, there's not one single good actor. Everyone in this movie is bad. There isn't even a good character. Like, these people exist and they have names, but they are not really characters. It's really bad. The action is ridiculous. Like, even in the 80s, when you have the action superheroes that survived all manner of BS, even there were some excuses. Like, Arnie would survive 100 guys shooting at him because they would all miss. He wouldn't get hit 100 times and survive. But in this movie, it doesn't make any sense. Like, this guy survives everything. And why? And why there people compare to John Wick? Even in John Wick, there are rules. Like, he has his bulletproof suit, which in reality doesn't make any sense. But in the movie, it makes sense. Because everybody who has that suit is bulletproof. And when he gets stabs, he still bleeds. He isn't Superman. This movie has no rules. It's completely ridiculous. Nothing matches. Even the equipment doesn't match at all. Like the Germans or the Nazis, because it's easy to have Nazis as the bad guys. That's why they're in this movie. They're never introduced or presented as really bad. It's just like they're Nazis, therefore they are the bad guys. In the end, they do some bad things, so okay, then they are established, but they don't build up bad guys. They just label it Nazi, therefore bad guy, therefore movie. It's ridiculous. But anyway, the Nazis in this movie drive around in a Russian tank with a Russian machine gun on top. At the end, one of the Germans tried to escape and they used an American paratrooper plane or transport plane with a Red Army star on it, who also has a bomb in it and is flown by Germans who try to escape. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm pretty sure there are several scenes in this movie where somebody fires the Kar-89 as a semi-automatic rifle. And everybody who ever played any shooter knows that the Kar-98 is not a semi-automatic rifle. Nothing in this movie makes sense. The actors are all bad throughout. There is, if I would to have to describe this movie, basically imagine you take like a western, like the Dollar Trilogy, Sergio Leone, and you take The Man with No Name, but you take the cheapest porn parody you can find. You take this guy, you put him into Finland at the end of World War II. You put, instead of bandits, you put Nazis in it. And then you sprinkle a bit of wannabe Tarantino style over it. And that's basically the movie. Like, it has the chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 things that are all titled for what is about to happen, like a book or like Tarantino likes to do. But that is just like a slideshow, like a PowerPoint presentation. No chapter 1, no chapter 2. To be completely honest, in the beginning, like the first chapter, so to speak, is just like really nice shots of landscape. They are really pretty shots, so I will not lie and say that everything is ugly. They are very, very well shot, where this guy is just mining for gold, and that part is kind of artsy, kind of nice. You have like explosion in the distance, and it's just him by himself. You have no dialogue. He's just digging for gold, and that is really well done. So I can give the movie that. But everything after that doesn't make any sense. So before I go further on the rant, I bet most people stopped watching already. This is not a good movie. I don't understand where the reviews come from. Who says this is a good action movie? It is not. It just isn't. It is not only a bad movie, it's a bad action movie. Nothing in this movie makes sense. Nothing is done with care. Like, nothing matches. I'm also pretty sure the uniforms don't match. And as I said, funny enough, last week, it seems that every time you have Germans in a movie, they are cast by New Zealanders or somebody else, except when you have Nazis. Nazis are always played by Germans. And this movie doesn't even do that. So the fake Nazis are not even German, they are just Finnish people, and there's an English guy in there for some reason, and the accents are all over the place. Doesn't make any sense. So nobody should watch this movie. It's really bad. I do not understand where these 70-80% ratings come from. No, just no. To go a bit further into the detail and into the story, so if you don't want to have any spoilers, you should stop watching now. It begins with this guy in the middle of nowhere finding gold. Yeah, there's some bit of explanation that this is the end of World War II, but that doesn't really matter. Like, the war never plays into the movie, never, except for the fact that the evil guys are Nazis and you need to justify that they are Nazis, so World War II. But if you replace the Nazis with gangsters, this could take place at any point in time. Doesn't make any difference. Anyway, he finds the gold and then he goes, he wants to go to a bank. But you don't know that he wants to go to a bank. It's never made clear where he wants to go and why he wants to go there. He just takes the gold and goes. He could go in the other direction because there are also cities there, but he goes into the direction he goes into. Why? There's no explanation. Never an explanation. Then he meets the first group of Germans who just let him pass because he is heading to a war zone anyway, so nobody gives a shit. Then he runs into the second part, they discover gold and want to kill him. And then the stupidity starts. Of course, these guys don't immediately shoot him, despite the fact that they want to. So they give him ample time to use his knife to kill them, and then they all miss. And the people with machine pistols attack him with spades. They do not shoot him, they just attack him close combat style, because why shoot the enemy when you can punch him? Doesn't make any sense. Then the guys with the tanks, the Russian tank, turn around, find them, and they chase him into a minefield. And of course he survives the first mine explosion. And then the stupidity gets turned up to 11. If you remember the scene from Wonder Woman where she uses her shield to deflect some machine gun fire, you could say, okay, she's basically a god and this material is basically, I don't know what it is, super strong. Okay. This guy uses basically a frying pan to deflect bullets from a dozen MPs and Kar-98s. I know it's not a real frying pan, but it's one of these pans that gold miners use to find gold in the river. So it's basically a big frying pan. Even that thing is solid steel. Which it isn't, because you couldn't carry it like that. If you ever had like a really steel frying pan. He uses that thing to deflect bullets. And maybe, if it were a really, really good made steel frying pan, you could deflect 9mm. Maybe. But Kar-98 goes right through it. But he survived this shit. Not only does he survive it, as we learn later, gets hit, but it doesn't matter. The guy has like a dozen bullets in his legs, keeps walking, because that's normal. Doesn't make any sense. And that's the way it goes. Then the Germans who laid out this minefield run into their own minefield, because of course they don't remember where they put their mines is, because that's how the army works. Stupid. And then he takes, that scene's actually in the trailer, and again that's not how things work, takes an anti-vehicle mine, throws it as a soldier, and the thing explodes when it hits his helmet. That's not how anti-vehicle mines work. And it goes on and on and on. Then there's a scene where he's underwater and the German soldiers who dive after him for reasons that nobody knows except maybe the director, and I bet he didn't even think about it, put on their helmets to jump into the water. Why the hell would you put on more clothes if you jump into the water to dive? Doesn't make any sense. In the same scene, he gets shot at with the machine cannon of the tank, like the big 7.9mm gun on top, which is Russian made, but makes sense for German soldiers to use it. And I think it doesn't even existed in 1944, but I could be wrong with that, but I'm pretty sure that gun didn't exist in 1944. He shot and he uses a dead body to protect himself. That gun shreds 2 people and buildings and cars. You cannot use a single body to protect yourself from shots. And that body gets hit like several times. And even if somehow that body would be dense enough to take these shots, the impact would be so great that he'd be thrown through the air. Doesn't happen. Then of course he gets hanged, and he survived being hanged for reasons. He sticks himself with a piece of metal to keep himself up a bit for like some hours at least, because it's night when it happens and he wakes up. So he's basically impaled by metal for like hours. Doesn't matter. He just gets up, kills another 2 people, done. And the end sequence is exactly the same shit. He uses like a pickaxe to kill like a convoy, and then he hammers on with his pickaxe on a tank. And of course, because reasons, again, the people in the tank open the hatchet to get out. If they would just remain in the tank, the guy with the pickaxe could do nothing to the tank. But that would be logic and the movie wouldn't end. Then he uses the pickaxe to hang himself from a flying plane. Like an American plane, nonetheless, who takes off. Like he jams his pickaxe into the bottom of the plane so he can fly with the plane. Great. Somehow he gets into the plane, then the plane, who's actually a transport plane, has a bomb. And he uses this bomb to flush out the evil guy, and then he drops that, and then that's the best part. This plane crashes, but not like a slow crash where you like go parallel to the ground. No, head on, like nosedive, straight down. I think it hits like a I don't know what it hits. It hits the ground, there's some water, and the plane completely disappears. Like the plane vanishes. Like a crashing plane completely vanishes. Of course, this guy, sometime later, climbs out and is perfectly fine. It doesn't make any sense. It's so bad. And the problem is, beside this ridiculous action, the characters don't make any sense. Like you never learn what the motivation of the main guy is. Like you learn that in his past, his family was killed and therefore he takes revenge on the Russians. But you do not learn why he's digging for gold and why he wants to take the gold to the place where he's going, which is now occupied by the Russians. And if you know anything about history, I don't think that the Red Army would let some guy with 2 bags of gold march into their city and exchange it into money without taking it away from him. Especially not during World War World War II, my mistake. That wouldn't work. He would not walk into a Soviet-occupied town with 2 bags full of gold and walk out with money. That's not how that would have gone. Anyway, so we do not understand why he goes where he goes, why he digs for gold. I mean, it's understandable that he wants to keep the gold because it's his gold, but we don't learn why he wants this gold so bad, why he needs it so bad. He just, I don't know, wants money. And then the bad guys are just bad guys because they're Nazi. Like, when people say it's like John Wick, no, in John Wick, it is established, the bad guys establish how dangerous John Wick is. They tried it in this movie, like with a stupid radio call and say, oh, he was part of a special unit. And that to explain how dangerous he is, but it doesn't come across. It's not delivered with any conviction. It's completely stupid. Like, it's not believable. And the motivation for the bad guys is a bit clearer because he killed some of their guys and they want revenge, and then they discover the gold and then they want the gold. Okay. But it's still, they're so incompetent that they're never a real threat. So there's no suspense in the movie. And then there's this thing like he throws one guy on the ground, I just remembered, and he lays on the street clearly in the middle of the tank. Like between the 2 tracks. So he is in no danger. If he would lie down, the tank would just go over him and he would be fine. And yes, that is possible. I did that myself in the military. That is possible. You can lie in the middle of the 2 tracks and it goes over you. And if the ground is flat enough, you are fine. But despite the fact that he lies in the middle of the tank runs him over and somehow he lies on the side of the road afterwards because the tank needed to run him over. Why didn't they push him immediately in front of the tank and run him over? Why did they show clearly that he's not in danger of being run over by the tracks and then is being run over by the tracks? Doesn't make any sense. And that's the biggest problem with this movie. Overall, it does not make any sense. Like, there are women who are freed, fair enough, and then they leave their perfectly fine truck behind and walk towards like one guy. They try to revenge himself on, capture, whatever. And afterwards, they show up in a tank. First of all, it's not... I don't believe that they would know how to drive a tank, but let's give them that they know this. They could have never known where this tank is. So they leave a perfectly functioning truck behind to walk through Finland with some guns, hoping that everybody else is dead except one guy. And then after that, they keep walking until they find the tank, which they didn't know where it was, or if it even was still intact. But that works out. And then, of course, they surrender to the Russians. And if you know anything of the history between Russia and Finland, it is highly doubtful that some civilians would surrender to the Russians voluntarily. I don't think they would do that. But even that, at that point, this movie is way too far gone. So, it is... Like, the scenery is nice, okay, but the acting is bad from everyone. There's not a single decent actor in this movie. The action is completely stupid. Not, like, over-the-top entertaining, just stupid and ridiculous. This is a joke of a movie. I'm sorry that I have to say that. Well, I'm not sorry. I didn't make this pile of garbage. It's a bad movie. It's a really, really bad movie. And it's like, if you hear anybody say, oh, it's like John Wick in World War II. No, it isn't. It's bad. It's cheap. It's ridiculous.